Okay, so welcome to Hearts, Erica. It's really wonderful to have you here. And we were just going to start having a conversation really about what our journeys are in healing ourselves, and then we'll get to talking to you about what kind of healing you provide for others. So thank you so much for making the time. You're the first person to do this with me. And it's really just, this is just a place where people can have a look and figure out who might be a person that I feel called to go and work with, or maybe just what things I could try, so people might just be looking for something to try, and they might not have heard of a lot of things, or they might not have known anyone who's tried those things before. So hopefully by doing these interviews with different healers around the world, we can find some new ways to help each other out.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. I'm really excited about the idea because I think it is really interesting to really understand who people are and what they offer.
Yeah, and so I've always been really interested in what you get up to, because I haven't actually been to see you for a treatment, but I know that you have done a lot of really great work with a lot of people in our meditation group. So what is it that you are doing at the moment?
Yeah, so at the moment I'm working with a process called embodied processing, which is it is a somatic therapy technique. So what I do is rather than when you come to me, we don't talk about your problems. We allow you to experience them in your body. It's really just working with nervous system regulation. And a lot of what we experience is repeating energetic patterns, kind of how I see it. So what I work with is really getting to what is the root of where that energy first came from. And that could be like something that happened in childhood, could be something happened in the womb, that could be something happened from in your generation. But we don't know where it comes from on a conscious level because I mean, sometimes we do if you've experienced something really big. But often you could just be like, oh, I just feel anxious. I've got this heavy energy. I don't know why I keep getting in these jobs where I'm not happy and my colleagues are annoying me. And then, so what would happen in a session with me is you would come in and I would get your body in a really safe, calm place. And then I'd say, just bring that person to mind. And then you just let go of the story. And I'm like, what do you feel in your body? And people are like, oh, my heart rate's like going, I feel sick in my stomach. And then that's kind of where we start the process of letting your body sort of say what's underneath it all.
Yeah.
So you then like a memory might come up and it's like, oh, I'm at school and the teacher's yelling at me. You wanted to run away, but you couldn't. So you kind of had this repressed emotional experience that hasn't been allowed to express. So then in the session, we work with that energy to allow you to express it. So that could be whatever you need to do. You might want to, everyone knows the fight or flight situation. Usually what we do, we go into freeze and we haven't allowed the fight or the flight. So in the session, usually one of those responses wants to come up. So someone might want to imagine punching or physically just pretending to punch that person. Whereas all goes on, someone might want to hide and they might get a blanket put under their head and have a little cry. So it's all kind of like anything can happen. Go into even just how I see it. Some people would, we kind of talk about shadow work. But like how I kind of see that is like when people start talking about shadow work, especially when I was new in the spiritual community, I was kind of like, oh my gosh, that's like where all the scary demons lie and the things that are going to get you. But I've kind of found in my work that's actually where all the really beautiful parts of you are hiding. Because over our life to survive, we've had to hide parts of us and adapt to these kind of fake identities just to fit in the world that we live in. So a lot of it as well is actually just going and finding those beautiful parts and integrating them back in.
It's so beautiful that you said
Yeah.
that. I
Yeah.
love that because I think there's so much of how we are in the world that we're not conscious of, and so that trying to be authentic. We always talk about authenticity and be true to yourself and let go of the things that no longer serve you, but so much of the time we don't actually realize what those things are, and that seems a beautiful process to be able to go into the feeling experience of something.
Yeah. I feel like that is really, so often we're told just come back to who you are, express yourself authentically, just like you're saying. But we don't know who that is.
No.
Like, because our whole life we've just been reflecting back who people around us tell us that we are. And we've just learnt to fit in to, survive. And then at one point you just begin to feel a little bit lost, I think. I think that's where a lot of people's kind of sense of feeling unfulfilled comes from, because they're like, I've got all these external things, but they're not bringing me back to that sense of fulfillment within me. But how do I find that?
Yeah.
It's hard. I know, like in one of my sessions that I had on me, it's actually a root cause therapy session, which is I offer that as well. I came back to this, it was kind of a memory that came to me, but it was sort of shown to me in a metaphoric way. And I was a child and I could see my parents and I could see kind of teachers and people around me. But the front of them was a mirror, and the mirror was all cloudy. And I was just trying to find like the sense of identity from all these dirty mirrors. And just, it was so like, I was just like looking around me, and then I got the image of that that book. It's a children's book, and it's called like "Are You My Mother?" And it's a little duck goes looking, and it's like going up to these cows, like, "Are you my mother? Are you my mother?" And I just feel so often in life that's how we are. We're just going up to our parents or our friends, and we're like, "Tell me who I am."
Yeah.
Tell me who I am. But yet, we are only, when we're like that, we're just a reflection of all these energetic patterns that aren't ours.
That's so true.
I feel like a lot of what I do is just work with people to work out, well, who are you if you're not trying to fit in here? Who are you if you're not trying to keep yourself safe? So it's about, bringing people back to that sense of safety so that those parts can actually come out and be like, oh, I actually can be myself. Yeah, I am going to be okay.
Yeah, and I guess that's the thing, isn't it? When you're working with the central nervous system and you're working with somebody in that somatic experience of what is actually happening within me, given any situation, it's opening an entire world up that we've basically spent most of our lives getting shut down. So when we go into how we feel, that's a really overwhelming process for a lot of people. So to find somebody who can walk with you along that and to reassure you, because obviously we're not going to lift off every layer all at once, but having sessions or just going through processes where you can get more and more in touch with that has to be the key to finding out really who you are.
Yeah, like working out what is a survival adaptation, even like personality traits like shyness or being a really big personality, they're just characters that you've learned to play. And so even like as deep as like who you might even realize that your personality is not even who you are. It can be quite transformative. I know for me as well that I have only been working in this way this year. So I had a lot of energy healing on myself and other techniques, which were all really helpful. And I have my own practices, meditating and doing energy clearing. But the first time I had a somatic experiencing session, I was like, oh my God, I'm totally disembodied. I'm not connected with what's truly going on in my body. Like I was quite like astounded at what I couldn't see in myself because I was just too, I guess, too disassociated, too in my mind. And I realized that even in my meditation as well, like I would go out to source energy out there and send my love out and do a lot of things that were out that I didn't bring much time to kind of coming back to like really sitting with, oh, how am I really feeling? Really going on for me. Yeah.
And so, how did you come across the practice? Did you call it
embodied processing? So 3 years ago, I was doing had trained to be doing energy healing and Centaura healing, and I was offering that part-time, but I was also working 3 days a week in corporate as a business services manager. The end of last year, I just felt to stop both of them. I just really felt like neither of them were fully aligned with me, or just something wasn't landing for me. So I ended up just stopping both, walking away from both of them, which is another story because it was just a huge challenge for who I was as a person to let go of both of those things. And then I just spent some time trying to just figure out what I want to do. And then I don't actually know exactly how, but someone told me about the Centre for Healing in Melbourne. And I looked on their website, and I actually was originally like, I'm going to do this course called Root Cause Therapy, which I did. But at the time, they were doing like selling 2 packages for one kind of deal. So I was like, oh, well, I might as well just get this embodied processing one as well. But I didn't really understand what it meant. Like I didn't, even when they were describing it, I'm like, I don't really get it. But anyway, I'll do it. And so I didn't know with either of them if they were things I'd end up doing, but I felt like I just needed to get my energy moving forward because I'd become a bit kind of stuck. But as soon as I started doing the embodied processing one, I was like, because you have to have a lot of sessions on yourself and give a lot of sessions, I was like, wow, this is really what I've been missing from the way that I work with people. And I think with the energy, when I was just offering energy healing, although I can see that I use energy healing in the embodied processing, I felt that often it was directed by me, and I felt sometimes that just fully didn't kind of resonate with me always. Felt like people were receiving something which was beautiful. But I felt like there's a depth when the person is leading the experience themselves.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I feel like now what I've got with embodied processing, because what often will happen is we will get to the root of something, and then I can step in a kind of more energy healing way and bring in some frequency or some coding to kind of support that transformation that they have already made that mind-body connection with.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really big shift for me also, is that kind of realization that for me in my healing, there's been times where I've needed to go and let somebody else do for me. And then as time went on, and I used to have like tarot readings and readings by people and, all sorts of stuff. And then I got to a point where I was like, I just don't want somebody else telling me about me anymore. I want to know that it's true because it's coming from me. And it sounds like you're on that same thing where, as you go through it, there's a benefit to all of those things. But I wonder whether there's a collective shift away from allowing other people to work on us rather than allowing other people to support us to do our work.
Yeah, that is interesting. It's hard to say. I feel like personally that resonates with me. But I can imagine sometimes, like when I was early on in my journey, it's almost like I did need some people to kind of tell me, be a bit more directive. And I think it's kind of a danger zone as well, though, because then you can end up really giving your power away, or just following people without listening to your heart. But then as you mature, I feel like, you've got to kind of do the work yourself. I feel like you can't continue to kind of have other people drag you
Drag you up.
drag you up. Yeah. So I think that there is an element of where you're at on your journey with that. But I always think that even wherever you go, there should be like some teaching element to what's happening, like that you actually have learned something that you can apply in your life. But like, I wouldn't like to be in situations where I felt like clients were coming to me continuously without them kind of growth.
Yeah. Well, it becomes such a huge responsibility, doesn't it? And unless you have a I don't know, like a God complex, you don't really want to be, the person holding all the answers for someone else. It's hard enough trying to find your own.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And I think the other thing that started happening for me as well in my in the energy healing sessions is that some people are really good channels and get lots of messages for people. I just wasn't, but then what would happen is they would start having all these really cool things happen to them, and then they're like, oh, did you see those colors too? Did you feel those people come in the room? And I'm like, no, I didn't, because I just realized as well, like you just hold space for people. And if you've got a really good holding a really good frequency for people, then that's actually all that matters as well. Like, they feel safe, they can unlock their own gifts, they can receive from spirit, and that is really powerful.
Yeah, I agree. I do give a lot of messages in the work that I do, but sometimes I just need to shut up, and I realize, because there's that balance of, like, I want the person on the table to be telling me about their experience, but it depends on where they're at.
Yeah, totally.
So some sessions I'm like, I just have to keep telling, because if I keep getting the messages, part of the process is that you have to pass it on. But there is a point where you like, maybe you're actually interrupting their flow by doing so.
Maybe. I mean, like, I wasn't getting the messages. It wasn't like I was trying to shut up. They just all kind of, they still drop in sometimes, and then I will share them. But it was like they just went, which I actually found a little bit difficult at first, because, there's, when you go to other people and they give you really cool messages, you feel like, oh, aren't they? They're a really good healer. They're a real good channel, and then I'm like, oh, I'm just the space holder. But now I can really see that is like a gift I have, is actually just to be present for people and make them, I don't know how, they just feel safe to express themselves and allow these things to happen. And now I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, that's so funny to me, because I know of you as a very intuitive person. So it's just about how we get the messages, I suppose. And, and listening and being able to hold that space is actually the biggest gift that you can give somebody, really, because, like we said, you just don't want somebody always telling you who you are. And that's what we've been working with up to the point that we come to find out who we are for ourselves. So you need somebody who can just be there and let that happen if that's what's going on. And it sounds like your sessions definitely allow people to access more of who they are really.
Yeah, I see a lot of what I'm working with when people come to me is just a really deep wounding. Yeah, and it's just allow a lot of it is just how can they actually process that and feel like safe to do that, because it's quite, some of it can be quite painful. I have a lot of people that have had sexual abuse or emotional or physical abuse from their parents. That is a really deep wound that you hold in your body as an active threat. So to be able to hold space with people like that to process those kind of wounds is really, it's a beautiful thing to see happen. And that if there's a process that can allow people to work with that stuck energy without feeling re-traumatized, like I feel like that is so powerful. Because often, like with that kind of work as well, people don't want to talk about what happened to them. Like, why
Right, and sometimes they don't actually have the words, I think. I liked what you said initially. You were talking about how people will, have to come and have the feeling of it because it's like, why does this keep happening? You said, why do I keep ending up in this job or whatever it is? And you were saying about this letting go of the story, and I think that's such a really big part of our programming is that we have stories for everything. There is an explanation for everything, and we're told when there is no explanation that can't be possible. So something might be impossible even though you've had an experience of it. So to me, that going through that cycling energy, because obviously if it keeps happening, if something keeps appearing in your life, then there's something about that's attracting more of it to you. So, like to be able to go into a place where you can be safe and secure so that you can actually drop in and do some work is incredibly important.
Yeah, it is. And I think that as well, when people realize on a conscious level that a lot of the way they're reacting, they can't actually control it because it's coming from an automatic, unconscious place. So there's a frustration, I think, that people get with thinking about themselves on a mental level, like, why did I do that again? Or especially if it comes to like addiction or like a really unhealthy pattern, you're like, why did I end up just having another bottle of wine? And then when you help them to understand that that's a coping mechanism that's driven from something, a pain that's like really deep in their survival physiology, they're kind of like, oh, okay, I'm just using this to cope. It's a strategy. But if I actually work on the deep emotional pain of what is it that I'm trying to soothe myself with, and develop another soothing strategy, then that will stop rather than just being like, well, you should just stop drinking and I just need to try harder, or like.
Yeah, like mind over matter.
Yeah, like mind over matter. Like, why do I keep yelling at my kids? I don't want to, and then just like, wow.
Yeah, we are funny creatures, but I think we also have to have so much compassion for ourselves, right? Because we all do it. We all, as soon as there's something that we don't want, we inevitably draw it out pretty quickly.
Yeah, so true. What are they saying? What they persist.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, yeah. But I do see that what I see with patterns as well is like, because I call myself Erica Energy Weaver, but and that one of that reasons is because I see everything as energy and patterns. That's kind of how a lot of if I channel something or I see something, that's how I see it, as a pattern. And it's actually quite interesting because I am a very logical, analytical person, and so it's almost like when I can see those patterns, and I see it just like I would, like I'm void of emotion about it, like it's kind of just like it's at our core, we are energy, and it doesn't have it has that neutralness to it. It's like I don't see it as good or bad. I'm like, okay, there's just a little pattern that just needs to be repatterned. Like, like there's just a program that needs to be changed. Rather than like, sometimes it can be like these big bad energies and these really good energies, and it's all good parts of us and bad parts of us. It's all, all very, has a story to it as well. Yeah. But I think as well, like the way that just seeing things as energy patterns can kind of remove the blame or the judgment from things as well, and just kind of come back to like, okay, this is a pattern that we just need to get to the root of, pull it out, fix it up a bit.
Yeah, and once you do, don't you kind of go, oh wow, that was such an amazing opportunity to learn something.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But then as well, I think like sometimes people feel like, oh my gosh, I've got so much trauma or so much emotional imprint. How could I ever possibly get to the bottom of all of them? But I also notice as well, and you probably see this as well, that usually most people, you can break it down to three to four themes. And once you start breaking one of them or working on the experience of one of them, it'll unravel the rest of them.
Yeah.
You don't need to go into every energetic pattern. I feel like if you can kind of get the main ones, then it's almost like organically will start to unfold itself. And particularly if you can get the big ones that are coming down from your family, I find that those generational emotional patterns are really fascinating. Like I've got a big one in my family of abandonment, disempowerment. And I can see it so many times in my family line with people being adopted or giving away kids or just having a parent die. And if you can start to work on those kind of big themes as well, like clearing the abandonment and empowerment, like I feel like that will really get people in a good place rather than focusing on maybe smaller ones.
Yeah, but it's interesting, isn't it? Because you can go big or small.
Yeah. It starts small, but can go to something big. Yeah.
I suppose when you go to things like fear and love, as you're, in a duality consciousness, we've got these, like light and dark, and then it's like, okay, well, if you can go into that kind of clarity, which is, that's a big ask, but essentially, when you start to work through your body will tell you, won't it? Like, am I behaving this way out of fear? And what is the contrast if I was in a loving place where I was looking after myself? And
yeah, that's true. I like that. I do think as well, one thing that I find that people find really difficult is to have a boundary in their life. Or they don't know how to make a decision because they haven't learned what a yes feels like in their body and what a no feels like in their body. So I've been able to work with people to learn what a no feels like and a yes feels like as well. That's a really empowering thing for people because it means that in any situation they can come back to that love or fear kind of situation. You're like, if I don't know what my mind doesn't know, well, this seems really good for my mind, but they can feel what it feels like in their hearts. Be like, no.
That's a journey all of its own, isn't it? That's how we end up with, cults and, groups all doing things that, pulling us into a thing that is not good for us, because our the inversion of what things actually are, the way that we've kind of experienced things, like if we've experienced love in a very dysfunctional way, you know, we can then go somewhere and somebody could be really offering us exactly what we want, and it might actually be triggering the same response in the body of like, actually, you know, this is probably terrifying and not good for me, but I'm really used to that feeling, so yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Like this feels like home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of housekeeping to do.
I know. So true.
And so tell me, like, along your journey, um, because you were obviously working a little bit more corporate before, but I mean, are there points in your life where you can say, I tried something or something occurred to me and that feels like a sentinel moment on my journey?
Yeah. So I probably only 4 years ago, I was really in corporate. I wasn't spiritual at all. I would have judged everything I'm doing now. Would have spent like weekend at parties in a good time. But then I ended up getting basically really anxious, and I didn't know why, and really depressed. This was 2021, I think. And I walked into the bathroom and I looked in the mirror, and I felt my soul talk to me, and it was like really full on. Like I just looked at myself in the mirror and I could see death in my eyes. Kind of, I could see death. I was like, I'm not myself. I just knew something was missing, and then it's almost like I could feel this like love wave come over me, and this like my reflection changed to be someone else, and they had love in their eyes, and they were like, "Are you ready?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to change." And then the next morning, I got up and I said to my husband, "Yeah, so I'm going to be a spiritual healer now."
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, and then I didn't know what to do. I didn't know anyone or anything that was kind of in this world. So I started going to a psychotherapist, which was really helpful. She helped me kind of unpack, everything that was going on. And then at the same time, I saw an ad on a Facebook page for a healer called Natalie Brown. And I was just like, as soon as I saw that ad, my heart was just like, well, I was like, I have to see this woman. Like, I just was like, I don't know why I have to see her. It's just like such that knowing of like, yeah, this is what I need to do. So I called her up, and she's the Centaura energy healer. She actually channeled the Centaura healing protocol, which I ended up learning. Yeah, and then I went to her, and it just, as soon as I saw her, I was just like, I knew like she was the person that I was meant to work with. So she did energy healing with me and kind of coaching, and then I kind of had this psychotherapist on the side where I'd go and talk to her about all the stuff that happened in the spiritual world and just be like because those two parts of me were trying to kind of figure each other out. It was kind of like, oh, I don't know about this. Oh yeah, I really, really love this, but I'm not sure. So it was good to have both of those at first. And then I met Melly Rose, who, obviously you work with too, in the same kind of way. Like, just someone else posted on about her doing the meditations in the mornings during lockdown. And I was like, I wanted to go to someone else, but because of the vaccine thing, or I don't know what it was, I couldn't see that person anymore. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to go to Melrose. And then that kind of the same thing, as soon as I met her, it felt like, that real, like, this is the person I meant to work with. So, like, I think it's like we were talking about maybe before we were recording. It's like I knew the people that I needed to work with. One was Centaura Healer. I mean, Melly does Reiki, she does Bowen. But when you're actually with them, they are just their own blend of intuitive gifting. So it's, I think that's probably the two most influential people that have been in my life working with me. I mean, I've done lots of breath work and kind of somatic dance stuff that's been really fun, but like in terms of life-changing kind of connections, it's probably those two women.
Yeah. Oh wow, that's amazing. I mean, that's a huge shift. that's probably one of the starkest shifts that I've ever heard of. But even when you're talking about looking at yourself in the mirror and just before you said you felt the wave of love, I was like, wow, that's a super emotional, like it was making me emotional.
Yeah.
Because what a massive realization to have out of the blue. It sounds like it was just so surprising.
It kind of wasn't though, because my whole life I had wanted to be, I'd suppressed it by the time I got to 44 so much. But when I was a child, I had so much fascination with crystals and dream diaries, and I don't know, like I remember like once someone saying, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I remember just getting this picture of myself like on a beach in these hippie clothes, like swirling around. And I was like, oh, I wish I could say that. I was about 9 or something. But my parents were really academic, really scientific, really well educated in this kind of traditional sense, very emotionally unavailable people. I got love through academic success and being smart and being cynical about anything that's a little bit like woo-woo. So that I think maybe that's why I really connect with this somatic work, because now I can see, that was how I adapted who I was to survive in my household. Like it just would not have been acceptable to come home and be like, even like, oh, I want to do art, or I want to do something more creative.
Yeah.
And that patterning of getting approval through achieving just stuck with me. So yeah, by the time I got to that point, you're tired of being someone else. Even though it's almost like that was just the moment it became conscious, that the unconscious stuff was already showing up, the anxiety, the unfulfillment. They were like very present. And I was like, why am I feeling like this? I've got great friends, I've got a great husband, I've got a great job, I earn lots of money, I've got a house. But yet still there's like this sense of unfulfillment and deep unhappiness. And it just got to the point where I couldn't ignore it anymore. So at that moment when I had that realization, it felt way better to me to just do something totally crazy and go that than to stay where I was. It was so like dead is like how it felt, just like, oh, can't go on pretending.
Yeah. I think that's going to resonate so much with people who there's so many people, right, who are living their lives. I feel like we live about they used to say you only use 10% of your brain power.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, what about the other 90%? But I feel like what we're really doing is we're only living 10% of our potential. So it's like we're living this whole existence, and there's all of this other stuff happening in our subconscious, say, and when we finally kind of open up to the idea that there's a bit more than what we've been taught or told, then suddenly, I don't know, don't say that I'd be working at 100%, but like even 50% is massively huge compared to 10%.
No.
So that's a huge shift. And what did how did people take that in your life? Like, what was that like?
That was really difficult. Yeah, most people were like, okay, like no one was like, don't do that. But I could tell there was some concerning kind of. My husband was like, look, I know you're not happy, so you just pursue whatever's going to make you happy. But I think it was more when it came to, more like the friends, because they didn't understand. They hadn't had any experience of like this. They were still kind of how I would have been like 5 years ago, really almost dismissive and judgmental of anyone that would pursue that kind of lifestyle. So it felt, it was lonely.
Yeah.
Like deep was my conviction, but I would still go to places with my friends, the ones I was hanging out with a lot. But I think once I stopped drinking in the way that they did, and just kind of pulling away from some of the behavior that I didn't like or didn't resonate with me anymore, then it kind of shifted and I didn't feel as welcome there. Or it was it was very kind of subtle. It's just kind of like I didn't want to be around certain groups of people anymore. My energy had just changed. Like they were doing anything wrong or I was doing anything wrong. You just have this time of kind of falling out of frequency with everything and then waiting and hoping that it'll get a bit better one day.
Yeah, well, that is huge, isn't it? Because, I think sometimes people see it a little bit like a betrayal because you're suddenly just doing something so different and so outside of what has been acceptable.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it would have felt like that. Like there's kind of like they probably felt rejected by me, and then on some level they felt rejected by them, and that over time it works itself out. But when you've been in a lifestyle with people and you no longer resonate with that lifestyle, it's hard to keep hanging out with them.
Yeah.
When you want to change.
And so have you found that there's people who've come along on the journey a little bit more than you would have expected?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like with the group that we have through meditation and also when I did my healing course through them, it's amazing. Just one day you realize that you do have people around you. It just slowly kind of builds. Like I've definitely had answered a prayer. There's definitely times I was like, please God, just send me somebody.
Yeah.
And then as well, I don't know if it's because I haven't kind of been in the big kind of spiritual scene. A lot of it doesn't resonate with me. Like I'm like, I don't get any of what you're doing. It doesn't resonate with me on an energetic level or any level, like in the same way that hanging out with people that drink a lot and go to the bar, I sometimes feel that same kind of, I don't resonate here either. So then because at first I think when I first kind of was like transitioning, I don't know, reconnecting with who I was, I felt some pressure, like who am I now? And then you feel like, there's a danger of kind of almost picking up other identities that are not aligned with you as well. So I think I have in the last 4 years gone through little cycles as well where I've kind of got into something for a while and then I'm like, why are you doing this? Or why are you wearing that? Why do you have that picture on your wall?
Well, that's a good process of discernment, isn't it? Because we're all evolving all the time.
Yeah,
But I totally get that because there's a lot of spiritual posturing and there's a lot of, there's like a lot of inverted spirituality, and it's just an inversion in a different, wardrobe, or, there's just, you could have religion and then you can have new age stuff, and some of it will work for you and some of it won't, but it's massive when you go, oh, I think I found my people, and then you start going and hanging out around some of those people and you're like, oh no, actually I don't want this either. And also that thing of like when you're coming into the space of like, I'm bigger than this, like I know that this part of my life is just a bit of a front, and I know there's more to me. And then you're like often getting the messages with healers, when you go and see people and they're like, you're this amazing, powerful being, because you are. But then there's almost this pressure. It's like, do I have to be somebody? Like, do I have to now go and like pretend to other people that I've got this all worked out?
yeah, no, definitely that. I definitely felt that. Feel that sense of having to have it all together, and then as well, just being careful that I haven't got any sense of validation from how many clients that come to me or how much money I make from it as well, because you can start to fall into that kind of trap as well, like you're like trying to be somebody in the
And still seeking validation in the way that the old world operates. I know it's a big trick.
yeah, and I definitely have. I feel like in the last 4 years I've had all these really accelerated ascension death cycles. It's just like, oh my god, as well. Just understanding that it never ends. Every day I'm hopefully just finding out more of who I am and letting go of more of who I'm not.
Yeah, that's lovely. There was a guy, there is a man called Trevor Y, and he's an Australian man, an original man, and the original man. But no, he's just a very wise person, and I really want to actually get to know, or I want to listen to him more. And one of the things that he said recently when I was on a Zoom call with some people was we were talking about going out and, working with Lay Love Down and going out and singing on the lays and bringing our love to the land. And he just broke it down so nicely. He said it's the right thing to do. It's just the right thing to do, and you have the right to do that because it is right. And I was like, that's so much better. It's so much easier when you say, let's just go out in a group and have fun together because it is a good thing to do. It makes us feel good. Yeah. Not because we're going to go and save the world. Like, we will save the world, but we'll save it by having fun, being in joy with each other, doing something simple just because we can, not because we have to be, some kind of guru.
Yeah, I love that too. It's definitely how I approach life as well, as like really trying to come back to the things that feel like fun now as well. There can be endless seminars and workshops and this and that you can sign, more courses, blah blah blah, that can feel as well like you're not enough, or you need more qualifications, or more teaching, or more this or more that. But like you just think of life as what's fun for you. What do I enjoy doing? Like that's great. Like do a course if you find it fun. But
and that's because again it turns into an external validation exercise, doesn't it? And I keep doing that. Like I have this like curiosity about so many things, and I do remember thinking I'm not going to do any more courses, and then like in that year I probably did like another 3 courses, and I only completed 1 because you know, I learn as much as I feel like I'm interested in, and then I'm like, okay, well, that's enough. I mean, at least I've given myself the gift to give up.
Yeah, true, true. Yeah. I yeah, I do feel like, I mean, if people are looking for different healers or courses and things to do for, I think that is something to be mindful of, like that trap of that
Yeah,
cycle, because I have definitely spent a lot of money on stuff,
yeah,
courses, healers, people, and I don't know. Sometimes it can be just that wanting someone to make it all better for you, or like even as I'm a healer, as I'm a teacher, it's like, but I would be better if I just learned from this other person. But I'm also kind of like trying to come back to, what do I know
mm,
that no one else knows? Or is there something that
yeah,
I intuitively know? Like, what is that? I
yeah,
can't teach. Like, what is it inside me?
yeah. Because it's so easy, isn't it, to not do something because you see that somebody else is doing it in a more glossy and glamorous way. And so it can sometimes take you a little bit out of the things that you are good at, or, to know what your strengths are, because that comparison thing of like
Mm.
seeing other people. But yeah, it is that thing of how do you know what is your unique gift that you bring, and ultimately it's just you, right?
Yeah,
It doesn't matter how you do it, it's just you.
yeah, and surely it's the thing that brings you the joy. Yeah, like you were saying, that is the thing you're meant to be doing. Because what higher vibration is there to be doing something fun with other people that are having fun?
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter what you're doing.
And I think, I did QHHT, so I had a student who did Bowen with me who ended up doing root cause, and when I talk to her and when I see the way that there's differences but there's also similarities, I can see that there's just many, many different paths to get to the same thing.
Yeah,
And one of the biggest thing is everybody who comes along for for those kind of modalities too, I think it's like, this will give me my answer. I want to know what my purpose is. And
yeah,
you kind of have this expectation that you're going to walk out with this knowing about your purpose, and then you can go and do it. But obviously, it's not that simple, because if we were all just doing our purpose, then what do we do with the rest of our lives? It can't be just one thing. It has to be you being in the world in whatever you're doing. And I think that's what's freed me up a little bit to do this, actually. Is
right.
like, I don't have to have a podcast, and I don't have to be incredibly polished. I mean, I think I gave up on that a while ago. But, you know, why not just, whatever you're doing, it's the right thing because you're doing it.
Yeah, that's right. And as much as we would love to escape it, most of our life is spent in mundane things. No matter what someone's job is, how exciting it is, they still have to get up in the morning. They're incredibly wealthy. You got to still wash your clothes, wash your dishes, cook your food, interact with people at the shop. Um, and that is like the main part of our lives, is actually just this kind of routine, mundane, everyday tasks. And yeah, like it can just be a bit boring. It's like learning to be okay in that mundaneness as well. Like, rather than thinking like we've got this job that's like out there and it's going to be really exciting and our purpose will be that. I'm like, actually, my purpose probably just to be a nice person, nice
Yeah.
whole person with my family.
Yeah. But that's it. I always think when you get people who come and they have this, they've been getting the message about who they may have been in a past life, say, and there's this kind of grandeur about holding a particular title, whatever that might be. And people will be like, I just don't know how to kind of make sense of that given my life as it is. And I always think, well, you've got children, right? Like if you have children, then part of your purpose surely was to bring them into the world and raise them.
Yeah.
And I feel like that really brings things down a notch because you can go, okay, so no matter if I was like Cleopatra in a past life, right now I'm the mother to these two people and I need to do right by them, and that's probably the most important thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree with that. I've had to kind of bring myself back to that realization as well.
Yeah.
That as a mum, the responsibility that I actually carry for them is huge.
Yeah, and you were talking about that generational stuff, and I think I feel like we haven't quite fathomed all of that stuff about the generational lines. I can't quite figure it out because I'm like, yeah, I can do, my mind can bend to the past life experiences and multi-dimensional life experiences. I haven't quite figured out what the deal is with our soul contracts with our family, which we seem to repeat in. Like we seem to keep coming back to the same people.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't know the answer to that one.
Well, I'm going to come to you now, and you now you can figure that out for me, or help me figure it out, and then maybe we'll all be done with each other.
Yeah, I know that it can feel the generational stuff to me. Sometimes it can feel really tiring. Like for all of this year, I had a lot of ancestors, particularly my granddad, come a lot to me. But he wanted healing on his line, and I had to understand that. And there was a time when I was like, "Oh my God, go away, Papa!" Like, I'm just trying to sort out my own life. But then over the 6, 7 months, is what I realized is that he was trying to make me see all this trauma in his life, particularly around the war, because then I could see how that impacted my father, and then I could see how that impacted my father in the way that he parented me, and it really was really healing when I was able to make that connection, to be like, oh, my dad. It's not that my dad was ignoring me. My dad was just shut down, because of all what he'd experienced. And then I was like, oh, okay. That was healing when it finally got round to it. But for a while, you're like, if I'm responsible for clearing all my generational patterns, like, I mean, that is a lot. That is a lot.
Well, it is, and it takes time, right? Like you do
Yeah.
have to sit with that. I do think that's, yeah, I was being a bit glib about that because I do feel really that we stand with all of our ancestors right there behind us, and we are here as a representative of that line. And I'm not sure why or how we all decided that we were going to do it in this way or through these lines, but there's obviously something really important about being that person who stands there knowing that all your ancestors are behind you saying, you've got to clean this up. Because obviously you can't do it if you're not seeing any of the stuff. So if you're seeing it, yeah, it's a big responsibility, but it's also, like you said, it has to be a really massive part of healing for ourselves and also for our children.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how I can feel it now. I think if I can stop anything coming forward into them, feel anything for them, I would.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. that's a lot of work still to be done, I think. But thank you so much, Erica. I'm really pleased that you put your hand up and said you would do this with me because we haven't had a chance really to kind of get to know each other much outside of the meditations.
No, it's been awesome. I've really enjoyed it. I can't believe we've been chatting so long.
I know, yeah. And I'm really, I know that we've got little adventures in the future probably because there's been a couple of things that have come up where we've both been like, yeah, I want to do that. So I look forward to probably speaking to you again too in the future if you're up for that.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, lovely.
Yeah.
All right, and as a final word, do you have anything that you really want to leave with people?
Um, Now I've gone blank. I think it's just that just assure people that they know what they're doing. You know, that they sometimes we can feel like stuck or we don't know where to go, but actually it all works out. You know, they'll get there in the end if they just set the intentions. You know, the right people will come and the right opportunities will be there when they need them.
Oh, thank you. I think you have such a great deal of compassion, actually. Like you just have that feeling of being able to accept whatever's probably coming through the door for you. So I'm sure that more people will. I'm going to get some details from you about how people can make contact with you. So you're Erica Energy
Erica,
Weaver?
Erica Energy Weaver,
I love
my
it.
title for now.
And do you have a website?
Yeah, it's just ericaenergyweaver.co.nz.
Perfect. Okay, cool. Well, we'll put that down at the bottom of the video, and I look forward to seeing you in the future.
Yeah, you too, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
I don't know how to stop recording. There we go. I'll stop the recording.